All right, my secondary math 2 class, we are going to be reviewing today. That means your next class period is going to be a test. So we are reviewing graphing quadratics in both standard and vertex form. Okay, so first thing, let's identify the difference between standard form and vertex form. So let's write standard form in red. Okay, so standard form of a quadratic is written as ax squared plus bx plus c with a y equals in front. Okay, well, vertex form, let's write that one in blue. Vertex form is written as y equals a parentheses x minus h close parentheses squared plus k. So they look quite a bit different. Okay, so remember, when we are graphing quadratics, the first thing we need to identify is the vertex in order to graph the rest of it. Okay, so in order to find the vertex in standard form, okay, we need our mini formula, which is x equals negative b over 2a. That's going to help us find the x part of our vertex. Okay, so 1 and 2 are in standard form, and we're just asked to find the vertex. Okay, so we have our a, b, and our c that we can always identify in standard form. Okay, so I'm going to plug it into my mini formula. X is equal to negative b over 2 times a. Okay, and we're going to solve. Okay, well, if b goes on top, what is my b? Negative 6. Okay, a goes on bottom, my a is 1. Okay, well, what happens when I have this double negative on top? Turns into a positive, so I have 6 over 2 times 1, which is just 2. Well, what is 6 divided by 2? We get 3. Okay, so we know that our vertex for number 1, we found the x part of it, which is 3. Now we got to find the y. Well, in order to find the y, we have to take our x and plug it in everywhere we see an x. Okay, so now I have y equals x squared minus 6 times x plus 12. Okay, and everywhere I had that x, I'm going to plug in 3. Okay, now I can solve. First, we got to go do our exponents, right? Order of operations, exponents comes first. What is 3 squared, or 3 times 3? We get 9. Okay, then we need to multiply before we can add or subtract. So what is negative 6 times 3? Negative 18, and plus 12. Now all we're dealing with is adding and subtracting, so we can just do this from left to right, and we can even just plug it into our calculator. Okay, so I have 9 minus 18 plus 12 is going to give me, again, a positive 3. Okay, so our vertex for number 1 is parentheses 3, comma 3. Okay, so let's do the same thing for number 2. So the first thing we need to do is identify our a, b, and c. So we can plug it into our mini formula, right? So we have x is equal to negative b over 2 times a. Okay, and let's plug in what we know. So b goes on top. What is my b? Positive 6 this time. A is 1. Okay, so I have a negative 6 on top this time divided by positive 2. What is negative 6 divided by positive 2? I get negative 3. Okay, so now for my vertex for number 2, the x part is negative 3. Okay, beautiful. Now let's plug that negative 3 into our original quadratic equation to solve for y. So y equals x squared plus 6 times x plus 5. Okay, and everywhere that x spot was, I'm going to plug in negative 3. Okay, now I can go ahead and solve. Negative 3 squared, or negative 3 times negative 3, still going to give me positive 9. Okay, positive 6 times negative 3 is going to give me negative 18 again, and plus 5. Okay, so now we can put this into our calculator. 9 minus 18 plus 5 is going to give me negative 4. Okay, so we know that our vertex for number 2 is parentheses negative 3, comma, negative 4. Perfect. Okay, so this is going to help us when we're actually graphing these guys. Okay, so on 3 and 4, these guys are still in standard form, and we're going to still find the vertex, but then we're just going to graph it after. Okay, so let's identify A, B, and C. Plug it into our mini formula to find x. X is equal to negative b over 2 times a. Okay, b goes on top. My b is positive 2. A goes on bottom. My a is 1. So I get negative 2 on top divided by 2 on bottom. Negative 2 divided by a positive 2 is going to give me negative 1. Okay, so my vertex for number 3, the x part of my vertex is negative 1. Okay, so now we got to plug it in to find the y. So I have y equals x squared plus 2 times x plus 2. And everywhere I see that x, I'm going to plug in negative 1. Okay, so now let's go ahead and solve this. What is negative 1 squared, or negative 1 times negative 1? It's going to give me positive 1. Now I need to multiply positive 2 times negative 1. It's going to give me negative 2 and plus 2. Now we can go ahead and put this into our calculator. 1 minus 2 plus 2 equals 1. So we found a y part of our vertex was positive 1. Okay, now we can go ahead and graph our vertex. So find negative 1 on your x-axis first. So find negative 1, then go up to positive 1. Okay, now since our a was positive, we don't see any negative signs, we're going to go up 1 over 1, and 1, 2, 3 over 1. Mirrored on the other side, up 1 over 1, 1, 2, 3 over 1 on the other side. And there's our parabola. Okay, so remember, when our a is positive, or it was a positive 1, our arrows are going to go up. Our parabola is pointed up. Okay, we're going to need to know that for number 2, so let's identify our a, b, and c for number 2. So we can plug it into our mini formula. X is equal to negative b over 2 times a. Okay, let's plug in our b on top. My b is positive 2 again. But this time my a is negative 1. Okay, you see that negative sign? Negative 1. Okay, so I get negative 2 on top. Divided by 2 times negative 1 is also negative 2. Okay, negative divided by negative. 2 divided by 2 is just positive 1. Okay, so the x part of our vertex on number 4 is positive 1. Okay, so now we're going to plug positive 1 into our equation in order to find y. So I have y equals negative x squared plus 2 times x minus 4. Okay, and everywhere you see a space where our x was, we're going to plug in 1. Okay, so this right here is where PEMDAS comes in. Super important. We cannot multiply because technically this is saying negative 1 times 1 squared. Well, remember, in PEMDAS, please excuse my exponents come before multiplication. Okay, so what is 1 squared? We get 1. And then the negative 1 multiplies to it, making it a negative 1. Okay, if you would have done negative 1 squared, we would have gotten positive 1. That would have changed our answer. Okay, so now let's multiply 2 times 1, which is positive 2, and minus 4. Okay, so now we can put this part in our calculator, see what we get. Negative 1 plus 2 minus 4, and that gives me negative 3. Okay, so now we can go ahead and graph it. So find positive 1 on your x-axis. Our x-axis is actually way up here. So positive 1 and negative 3. It's right there. Okay, so remember when I told you that a positive a points up, but this time it was negative a, so we need to go down. Down 1, back 1, down 1, back 1, down 3, back 1, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. So this time, since it was negative, our parabola points down. Okay, well, our vertex, when it's at the very top, is called a maximum. When our vertex is at the very bottom, it's called a minimum. Beautiful. Okay, so that was graphing quadratics in standard form, where we actually had to plug it into our formula to solve and find our vertex. Well, vertex form is a lot nicer because remember, it tells us our vertex. Okay, remember in vertex form, our vertex is h, comma, k. Okay, so if we look at number 5, we see that a is on the outside, h is on the inside, right? If we're just going up here, h, and k is on the outside of my parentheses. Okay, so we can very easily identify our vertex because our vertex is just h, comma, k. But remember, what do we need to do with the sign of our vertex? Okay, remember, we have to change that sign because in our form, in our original form, it's a negative in there. Okay, so whatever the sign is with the h, we change it. Okay, so our vertex for number 5 is h. It was a positive 3, we got to change it. Negative 3, comma, k stays the same, 1. Okay, so now we can go ahead and graph this guy. So I have negative 3 on my x-axis, up to positive 1. Okay, remember, is our a positive or negative? It was negative, so this has got to go down. So down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, and down 3 over 1, down 3 over 1. Okay, negative a means that our parabola, our arrows point down, making this vertex a maximum. Beautiful. Okay, one more. Okay, so what is our vertex of this guy? Okay, remember we have our a on the outside, h on the inside of my parentheses, and k on the outside on the end. Okay, what do we have to do with the h? We have to change that sign. So it was a positive 4, now it's a negative 4. K stays the same, negative 3. Easy peasy. You can easily identify what our vertex is. Okay, so find negative 4 in your x, right there. Let me graph it in the same color. Negative 4 on our x, down to negative 3. There's our vertex. Is this going to go up or down though? Is my a positive or negative? My a is positive, so we're going to go up 1 over 1, same side, and up 3 over 1. 1, 2, 3 over 1. And there is our parabola. Okay, since our vertex is on the very bottom, that makes this guy a minimum. Perfect. Okay, those are your notes for today. There is an assignment that goes with it.